Rooster Tail Talk, the podcast dedicated to everything about the sport that we all love, hydroplane racing. I am your host, David Newton, and it's time once again, so sit back, relax, and welcome Rooster Tail Talk. Hello, race fans, and welcome back to the podcast. Today is Tuesday, June 23rd, and this is episode 186. It's summertime, it's official, and it's officially my favorite time of the year. This for a couple of reasons. Mainly because hydroplane racing is on the horizon. We're going to have racing happening in Madison, Indiana on the 4th of July weekend. Not just any race, but the season's going to start off with the APBA Gold Cup over in Madison, Indiana. Got some teams back that weren't racing before. Got some old familiar faces back in the driver's seat. So it's going to be a fun weekend of racing, and I'm really looking forward to it. But as many of you know, I'm also a school teacher, and that means I'm on summer break right now. And I'm so happy to be at home right now recording this on a weekday. I'm so excited to be on summer break and just be able to spend it doing what I want. And with my son, we're going to go to a lot of races, have a lot of fun things in store, and I just am so excited it's summertime. But because it's summertime, that means a lot of people are busy, and so I didn't have an interview for this week. So unfortunately or fortunately, we're going to go back and look at some race audio from a broadcast back in 1987. And with the upcoming Madison Regatta on 4th of July weekend, I thought we could revisit a race that has some pretty large significance in the grand scheme of things for H1 Unlimited. We're looking back at the 1987 Madison Regatta. And with this race, unfortunately, there was a very violent wreck that happened in Heat 3A with Steve Reynolds driving the Cellular 1. And because of the injury sustained in this wreck, Steve Reynolds wasn't able to get back into hydroplane ever again. And this is one of those times in the history of the sport, we all have those moments where if we could go back in the time and change something that had significant about the sport. There's so many deaths that happen. Notably Bill Munsey, Ron Musson, Dean Chenoweth, George Stratton, so many huge names that we lost from the sport. And unfortunately with this race, Steve Reynolds, he had significant brain trauma, wasn't able to really be his full self again. And as a kid, I always loved watching the races, and Steve Reynolds drew my attention, and I was a huge fan of watching his interviews, his racing. He was one of the guys that you always rooted for. He was so charismatic. And it was really such a huge blow to the sport that he wasn't able to continue with his capacity that he had before, because he was only with Steve Woomer a handful of years. He drove from 1984 through 87. So only really got 3 full seasons in with some pretty top-notch equipment. And things were looking his way. He had a really brand new boat that was super fast and had a lot of promise. And unfortunately for him and his fans, that was taken from him. Now, in my mind, if he would have been able to continue and didn't have that accident, he would have had a lot of more wins, a lot of more victories. I'm sure he would have won a Gold Cup driving some pretty fast boats for Woomer that he had in his arsenal. But also, we would have had a great announcer when he decided it was his time to retire. That I think was an X factor that was taken away from us that would have been so valuable to have someone who was so approachable by fans, so well loved, so charismatic behind the camera, that knew the sport so well. And if we could have had that just would have added so much to the experience of the sport. I'm so thankful that he survived. But I guess it's that selfish part of me that wishes that didn't happen and we could have enjoyed some more years with Steve Reynolds behind the wheel. All that said, you're going to hear some great interviews from some big names, other big names in the sport: Jim Kropfeld, Jim Lucero, and Todd Yarling. This race broadcast was actually put together, and I want to thank Laurie Marlow for saving this footage. She had this digitalized There's actually quite a few audios pieced together from the race. There's some pre-interviews that weren't on the race broadcast, and there's also some newsreels at the end there. So gives you a good experience of what it was like back in 1987. Another impact, you're gonna laugh at hearing Jim Hendricks and Lee Shaneth getting so mad about that patrol boat. And you can hear at the end, they just wanted to get out of Madison, and they were done being there for the day. Couldn't stand the ordeal they went through with all the red tape they had to do for the Coast Guard. And then also the accident at the end was just enough that they were just ready to go. Some other things I want to note, it's just so interesting to look back at this time frame of the sport, because you had some boats that were built in someone's garage or backyard racing against the top-notch equipment from Miss Budweiser's that they spent millions of dollars on. And it's so noticeable when they talk about the qualifying speeds, because the top qualifier and the slowest qualifier are over 40 miles an hour difference. We don't have that in the sport anymore, thankfully. But it was a bizarre and interesting time to look back and think of in that light. All right, that's enough of me yapping. So let's get in and listen to the race broadcast, the audio broadcast of the 1987 Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup.
The beginning of a colorful 4th of July weekend, and we are in Madison, Indiana, for the running of the Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup Unlimited Hydroplane Race. Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Lemmy with the Hardrow Hotline Report on this Friday, the 3rd of July. Let's bring things up to date by reviewing the high point standings as they are now following the Miami and Evansville race. These are the total points earned. The Miss Budweiser with 2,300 points. Risley Audio Video, 1,619 points. Pepsi America's Choice with 1,432 points. The Halsett Miss Madison, 1,377 points. Cellular One, 1,000 points. Miller American at 700 points. Mr. Pringles at 674 points. And Thor Racing at 564 points. We have a field of 9 boats here in the pits in Madison for Sunday's race. And here is a rundown of those boats and their drivers. First, we have in here the Miss Budweiser, Jim Cropfell driving. The Cellular One, driven by Steve Reynolds. Mr. Pringles, driven by Scott Pierce. Miller American, driven by Chip Hanauer. Risley Audio Video, Todd Yarling at the helm. The Halsett Miss Madison, Ron Snyder. Ed Cooper's boat, U-15, Mitch Evans driving. The U-7, Thor Racing with Jerry Hoff at the helm. And the Eliminator with Mike Bancroft, the Eliminator being the only automotive boat in the field. A reminder that last weekend, Evansville race Budweiser Thunder on the Ohio can be seen Sunday on ESPN at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask you to check your local television listings for your local area.
It's race number 3 of 1987 for unlimited hydroplanes at Madison, Indiana on the Ohio River for the second straight week. Last week, a little farther south at Evansville on this same river. This is the Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup. Lots of action on this third race. And we have a very special guest, a man who is a national high point champion driver, a Gold Cup winner, also an owner of several hydro halls, a man who established the Unlimited Racing Commission as its first commissioner. Today, he's the chief referee in charge. His name is Lee Shaneth. We'll be talking with Lee after this timeout. The noise, the speed. Back here in Miami, I was going to say Miami, here at Madison, Indiana. Of course, the third race, we started all in Miami a few weeks ago, and we're in the Ohio River again. Well, Lee Shaneth is with us. Lee, looking over the Miami situation, more excitement, of course, that took place on the Ohio River last week at Evansville, Indiana. Where is this sport going with all the turbines?
Well, I don't know, Jim. The turbines seem to be the most exciting thing that's happened to unlimited racing in a long time. I think each year you're going to see more and more turbines. And, of course, very little start in the enclosed capsule designed for the driver. There's a mandatory thing for 88. I think that's one of the biggest safety things we've come up with in a long time. I'm happy to be back in Madison. I was down here in 1951. I started here.
I'll be darned. You know, this is the first season that you're going to be doing all 9 of the unlimited races. Why are you taking on such a workload as chief referee?
I didn't take it on, Jim. The owners forced it on me. They asked me at the November meeting, the annual meeting, if I would come to all the races. Last year I made 7, but this year I'll add 2 more, Syracuse and Madison.
How long have you been in this sport, Lee?
Well, 51, I came down to Madison. Actually, in 1950, we started running the Gale boat at the time, and I drove in the 1950 Silver Cup race.
And you won the 1955 Gold Cup in Seattle.
55 Gold Cup in Seattle. That's right, Jim.
Well, we're looking forward to working with you again in 87, Lee, and thank you very much.
Okay, Jim.
Lee Shada, Chief Referee, has been our guest. Now, we'll be back in just a moment after this from your local sponsor. Back here on the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana. Let's check now with up-to-the-minute qualifying speeds. Here's Don Poyer.
Thanks very much, Jim. Right now we have 3 boats qualified on this first day of testing and qualifying at Madison and the Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup. The Miss Budweiser with Jim Kropfeld went out first, qualifying at 126.95 miles per hour. And the Miller American went out with Chip Hanauer out of Seattle at 129.75. And then a very solid performance, the Risley Audio Video, Todd Yarling out of nearby Hanover, Indiana, qualifying at just over 120 miles per hour. Other boats coming up, the Cellular One with Steve Reynolds, the Mr. Pringles, the U7, the Holset Miss Madison with Ron Snyder, and Thor Racing with Jerry Hopp. So we should have 8, maybe even 9 boats that will be qualified and ready to race on Sunday here in Madison, Indiana for the Indiana Governor's Cup. Jim?
Well, thank you very much, Don, and that'll wrap up this program. Don't forget, more of the same tomorrow on this station, and our Sunday coverage continues on the Unlimited Radio Network. From Madison, Indiana, this is Jim Hendrick reporting.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you enjoying the podcast and want to show your support? Well, now you can with Roostertail Talk Plus. This is a new subscribing service for our podcast where you can sign up for a monthly fee and help us to create and grow more content for Roostertail Talk. If you subscribe today, you'll get chances for monthly raffle prizes, extra content, early release to new episodes, as well as much, much more. This is a new service, and we'll be adding more to it as we move along, but your support is appreciated. As you can imagine, running a podcast can be pricey as costs increase for hosting fees, website fees, travel, equipment, and much more. With your support, you can help make sure we have new content coming to you every week and make this a better place for talking about hydroplane racing. You can find the link to be a subscriber in the bio of the episode, as well as on our website, roostertailtalk.com.
Please support the show.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Steve Reynolds from Madison, Indiana, the third stop of the Thunderboat Series. 5 boats so far have qualified on this very first day of qualifying. The Miss Budweiser was the first boat out this morning and ran a 126. She has recently gone out and requalified at 131.8, makes her the fastest qualifier. Followed by Cellular One at 131, the Miller American with Chip Hanauer at 129.7, the Risley's Express with Todd Yarling at 120, Mr. Pringles at 116.611, driven by Scott Pierce. We have 2 of the boats here to qualify. So far, the weather conditions have been very hot, very humid. The river is a little bit low, which creates some swells, but the qualifying has been very good so far. My guest today is Todd Yarling, driver of the Risley's Express, who went out this morning and ran beautifully, I might add, to a 120.353 mile-an-hour qualifying lap. Todd, what seems to be the difference? Why is your boat running so much better this year than it has been in the past?
Well, basically, we've made a lot more power this year with our fuel-injected alcohol turbocharged Allison. And we've done some boat work, rudder work, skid fin work, extensive propeller work. We decided to come our 5th year in boat racing. We're going to go out there and be just like Bernie Little and win one our 5th year. So we're going boat racing this year.
Well, now, your fuel injection system, you're getting a lot of help from who?
Hilburn Fuel Injection out in California. It's their system. So I decided they probably knew more about it than I did. And he set it up for me. And so far, everything's working beautifully.
I'll tell you, your boat is really handling great this morning. Isn't it feeling good to do well in front of the home crowd?
Yeah, last year, Madison's always been a jinx race for us. Everything breaks. Last year, we weren't even qualified Sunday morning, and that makes for a long weekend. We don't want to do that anymore. We were really happy to go out there and blow off a 120, and we really weren't even trying that hard.
Well, we're all very, very proud of you. Again, this is Hydro Hotline, brought to you by the Unlimited Racing Commission.
It is a hot, humid day here in Madison, Indiana, on the Ohio River, where 9 hydroplanes are in the pits for the 3rd race of 1987 for the Thunderbolts. I'm Jim Hendrick. We'll be joined by the chief of the Cellular One team, Jim Lucero. We'll have all the qualifying speeds for you on the station, but first, let's take this time out. Back here at Madison, Indiana, it's the Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup. I'm Jim Hendrick and Jim Lucero, the chief of the Cellular One team. And Jim Lucero, welcome to our microphone. I am noticing that race by race, lap by lap, or heat by heat, you're tweaking that boat in a little bit finer. Where are you going with it?
Well, hopefully we can get the new Cellular One dialed in at the Madison, Indiana race here. Of course, we got to Miami late. We just barely got into the show. We only got a few laps on the boat. So really, in my opinion, the first race we actually were at was last week in Evansville, Indiana. I felt that Steve did an excellent job considering what little time he had in the race. So we've been able to make some pretty good progress. We had a good race in Evansville, and we're trying to build on that here at Madison.
You know, when I watch you, you built this Miller American team, and you tweaked the boat in. You're not only an engine man, but you do pretty good with the hulls.
Anymore, the boats are so sophisticated that you really have to be able to work on all aspects of them. There isn't just any one aspect that makes a boat a winner or a loser. And when a team gets down, you have to look at all areas. The boats are so fast, so sophisticated that if you can't get the hull itself to work properly, you're not going to turn the kinds of speeds that the Miller and the Budweiser and the Cellular One are turning.
What do you think, as an expert in this field, what do you think of that Budweiser? Is she going to be hard to catch?
I'm really impressed. I think that the Budweiser team really deserves an awful lot of credit. For them to come out with a brand new race boat and run that impressively, I'm really impressed for them and pleased for them, especially considering the accident they had right at the start of the season. That really could have gotten them down, and they didn't let that happen. They came bounced right back and won the first two events, and they come here and bump the lap record. Not only, I guess they only bumped it by a mile an hour, but it's more impressive than that because they bumped it with a much smaller motor.
Well, you heard it from Jim Lucero, who's an expert in his field, and he's won more races, I think, than any other crew chief that I know of, and we thank him for coming to the mic. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
We'll be back with the qualifying times and check the action for you so far here at Madison, Indiana, after this from your local sponsor. Back here, the top qualifier, Miss Budweiser with Jim Cropfeld at 141 mile an hour. That's the course record for this particular course. Cellular One with Steve Reynolds at 131.3. The Miller American with Chip Hanauer checked in at 129.7. Mr. Pringle's Turbine, Scott Pierce at 121. Grizzly, Todd Yarling, 120.3. Whole set Miss Madison with Ron Snyder at 107. And the Thor Racing with Jerry Hop driving at 101.6. Still to qualify, Miss Pepsi with Fitz Evans and the Eliminator to be driven by Mickey Franklin. That's our report from Madison, Indiana. This is Jim Hendricks. So long. Hello, everybody. This is Jim Hendricks speaking to you from Madison, Indiana, the site of the Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup 1987, the third race on the circuit. The fastest qualifier is a man who the other day just set a course record for a 2.5-mile oval here in Madison on the Ohio River. His name is Jim Cropfeld. He's won the first two races of the year. We'll be talking to Jim in just a moment. But first, let's take time out for this word. Well, here in Madison, Indiana, race number 3 of 1987, Budweiser Thunder on the Ohio was last week. Budweiser on the same Ohio River, Indiana Governor's Cup this week. And this is the way they're going to draw for Heat 1A. That's the whole set, Miss Madison with Ron Snyder, Mr. Pringles with Scott Pierce, and the Cellular One, Steve Reynolds, and man beside me is Jim Cropfeld and Miss Budweiser. 141 course record. Jim, you got any more in that boat of the Budweiser?
Well, there's always a little more. I never go out and completely push it. Basically, when we broke the record, we were just trying a new propeller combination, and we tried some new air dams, and it just happened that we broke the record.
How is it that every time, the last first three races of this year, with 4 turbines, 3 hit in one heat, and 1 turbine runs out there all by himself in the B section?
I don't know. It always seems like Chip's getting a good break out there, but he's had some bad luck in the saltwater in Miami, and he had a little bad luck in Evansville, but it looks like he's really running great now, so I think the chase is on.
Yeah, he's 138 mile an hour coming in last night just before the pits closed to qualify as second highest qualifier, and that's only a blink of an eye between 138 and 141.
That's only about a second and a half, and, we can make that up in a turn real quick. A second and a half is not very much of a lead at all.
Do you have shoot speed on him, or does he have it on you?
I don't think I have the shoot speed. I never ran over 167 when I broke the record, but the boat turns so phenomenal, and the acceleration is just fantastic.
Well, thank you, Jim. Good luck, and I know you want to get down to your boat because it's going to be race time pretty soon. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Jim Cropfeld. Now, in Heat 1B, it'll be the Miller American with Chip Hanauer, the Thor U7 racing team with Jerry Hop, the Rizzleys with Todd Yarling, and Miss Pepsi, driven by Mitch Evans. So that's the way they'll line up. There are 8 boats that have qualified. It'll be 4 and 4, and we have a different type of format for this race. I'll explain that after this from your local sponsor. Back here on the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana, my name is Jim Hendrick, and of course we'll have reports throughout the day on this radio station and our half-hour program later on with the starting gun to checker flag, description, play-by-play of the final heat. Repeating 1A will be the whole set Miss Madison, Miss Budweiser, Mr. Pringles, and Cellular 1. Heat 1B will be Miller American, the U7 Thor Racing Team, Grizzlies, and Miss Pepsi. That's the way they'll go. Now, we are going to have a shortened heat sections. They usually run 5 laps in each 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. Today, they're only going to run 3 laps in each section and add a section. So we'll have 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and then the final. That means there's an extra 400 points up for grabs in the national high point standings. This is Jim Hendrick. More later. So long. Cloudy skies and a threat of rain prevail here in Madison, Indiana for race number 3 of the 1987 Thunderbolt Circuit. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Hendrick, and this is Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup on the 2.5-mile oval on the Ohio River. Today's event, well, it's been chaos. One of the most unusual days I've spent in my 25 years of broadcasting boat racing. A Coast Guard commanded boat broke loose prior to the testing today, and we've been in a 2-hour delay with no action as I report to you. Lee Shaniff, who has been very upset but trying to keep a calm head, our chief referee, will explain it in just a moment. But first, let's take time out for this word. First, back here on the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana, Lee Shaniff, chief referee. Lee, I cannot believe that all this time we've been sitting on the banks of the Ohio River because a Coast Guard, Lieutenant Junior J.G., didn't think that we should start the race without him being on the course.
Well, Jim, you said it all. I've been around a long time. I think I never counted, but this is somewhere around my 400th race. I've never seen anything like it. The boat broke loose. He was 400 or 500 yards off our race course. I said, okay, let's go running. And the other Coast Guard gentleman standing by me here said, oh, no, you can't run. And we couldn't figure out why. Well, the junior grade boy had to get back to see the race.
Well, let me ask you a question. Does that boat that broke loose have any safety faction in your race?
Absolutely nothing. We got 90,000 irritated people standing here wanting to see a boat race that this man held up. I just don't believe it.
So he just wanted to get back on course to see it. Now, couldn't he have waited for the first Heat 1A, 1B, and then that hour delay to come back on course?
Oh, there's a million different things he could have done. He just did nothing. He wouldn't cooperate. In fact, he wouldn't even talk to any of us on the radio to give us an explanation why.
Well, at least the world knows now, don't they?
They sure do. I rate your congressman. Straighten out the Coast Guard.
Okay, thank you very much, Lee Shannon. Lee Shannon, chief referee. When we do get under way, of course, we have a lot of action coming your way. And this is the way they'll draw. Heat 1A will be the whole set, Miss Madison with Ron Snyder, Miss Budweiser with Jim Cropfeld, Mr. Pringles with Scott Pierce, the Cellular 1 with Steve Reynolds. Heat 1B will be the Miller American with Chip Hanauer, the U7 Thor Racing Team with Jerry Hopp, the Risley Express driven by Todd Yelling, and Miss Pepsi with Mitch Evans. I'll be back with the final word after this from your local sponsor. Back here on the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana, Budweiser, Indiana Governor's Cup. About to get underway. That's put us a big delay. We do have a threat of rain, but they say it may hold off. The weather has cooled down considerably as the sun is, of course, behind the clouds. And that's one break that the 90-plus thousand fans sitting here on the banks of the Ohio River, irritated by a delay by the United States Coast Guard commander for this race. At least they're not out there burning in the sun. We are looking for, of course, a delayed half-hour program, so we'll advise all network stations to check on our 1-900 dial-up line, and you'll be kept abreast of when we will go with that half-hour show, and also with our 5-minute program. From Madison, Indiana, this is Jim Hendrick reporting. Was won by Jim Cropfeld and Miss Budweiser, average winning speed 129.2. Steve Reynolds finished second in Cellular, 1/3 to Scott Pierce in Mr. Pringles, 4th to Ron Snyder in whole set Miss Madison. Heat 1B, Chip Hanauer, Miller American, winner, average speed 120.9. Second place to Jerry Hopp at the Thor U7. 3rd to Mitch Evans and Miss Pepsi. Todd Yelling failed to finish in the Risley Express. And Jim Hendrick reporting from the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana, where we have 6 heats of action. 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, and 3B in a different type of format. And we've just had an accident in 3A just about 2 or 3 minutes ago. In 3A, Cellular 1, driven by Steve Reynolds, leading the pack down the back chute, took off in flying colors, lifted over and blew over, end over end. Parts of the sponsor came off, the tail came off. The preliminary word that we're getting right now is that the driver seems to be, as best as can be expected, it looks like he's going to be okay. We'll get official words later on in this program for you. But remember, the Cellular 1 does have a F-16 canopy. He does have a 5-point harness. He's strapped in. He's probably taking a jolt, and we'll get the first official word we can for you in just a moment. Today's action was delayed 2 hours because of a Lieutenant Junior Grade of the United States Coast Guard who would not permit the start of action because his command boat had mechanical problems and could not get into position. Once the action started, Heat 1A was won by Jim Cropfield in this Budweiser, average speed of 129.2. Steve Reynolds finished second in Cellular 1, third to Scott Pierce and Mr. Pringles, and fourth to Ron Snyder in the whole set, Miss Madison. Heat 1B, wire to wire for Chip Hanauer. The Miller American, average of 120.9. Second place to Jerry Hopp in the Thor U7. Third to Mitch Evans in Miss Pepsi, while Todd Yelling failed to finish in the Risley Express. Heat 2A saw the Budweiser go on to a second straight victory after a 2.5 lap side-by-side battle with Ron Snyder in the whole set, Miss Madison. And second place was to Miss Madison. Mitch Evans and Miss Pepsi third, while Jerry Hopp took fourth in the Thor U7. 2B was won by Steve Reynolds in Cellular 1, average of 121 miles an hour. Second place to Todd Yarling in the Risley Express. Third place taken by Scott Pierce and Mr. Pringles, while the Miller American lost the skid fin on lap number 2 and with steering problems went off the course and did not finish. Let's call in Paul Lamy right now. Paul, what's the official word on the Cellular 1, who just minutes ago flipped in Heat 3A down in the back chute while leading?
Well, as I understand it from this point of view, Jim, Eric Stilo, the chief diver for the URC, was able to pull him out of the cockpit of the boat. They put him in the stretcher, and they are at this moment bringing him into the medical area. The last report that I heard was that he was breathing, and so that's a good sign when they cut his life vest and all of those things away from him.
Okay, so we did not get an idea of whether he was conscious. He did flying. He was out in front by about 500 feet over the Budweiser, down the back chute, the start of lap 3A on the back chute, lap number 1. All of a sudden just went up in the air, took off like an airplane, went end over end, blew it over, and you can see parts of the right spots come off. The tail came off. The engine smashed down into the boat. But the canopy section, which is an F-16 cockpit that protects him, didn't seem to be that damaged at the time for my binoculars, and he is in a 5-point harness. We'll have to get official word. We'll be back after this from your local sponsor. This is Jim Hendrick back here on the Ohio River. We just got an update. Paul Lamy, I understand we just got a medical report on the two-way radio, and what was that?
Well, they're checking his symptoms right now.
Vitals?
He has right now a heart rate of 70, and so they're working on him, and they're staying real close to him right now.
I understand his blood pressure was okay also.
That's right.
Blood pressure is good, and the vital signs seem to be good at this time with Steve Reynolds as they're working on him after flipping the Cellular 1 on the back lap, the back chute of lap number 1 of Heat 3A. When he blew it over, he has a canopy, 5-point harness. We'll have to bring you up to date. The boat, of course, is just really smashed up. I can see part of the sponsons floating down here toward the right now. I want to advise all radio stations on our network that now you must call the hotline, the 1-900 number, and stay abreast because we will have a delay in the final heat due to this accident. That's it. Latest. Stay tuned to the hotline. Stay tuned to your local station. We'll update you immediately. We'll update you immediately on the station you're listening to now. Stations check in every 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll give you a short report on the condition of Steve Reynolds, which at this time seems to be pretty good. Pretty good. That's what we're getting for indications on that flip over of the Cellular 1. This is Jim Hendrick. So long from Madison, Indiana.
Indiana, it's Thunderbolts 1987. Today, the fastest race boats in the world, the Unlimited Hydros, compete in the Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup Regatta. All the action is brought to you by Budweiser. Beechwood Age for that clean, crisp taste. Hydro fans, this Bud's for you. By Popeye's famous fried chicken. You're going to love that chicken from Popeye's. By Mercury Outboards. With Mercury, the race never stops. By the Colorado Bell Hotel and Casino in Laughlin, Nevada, a Circus Enterprise. And brought to you locally in your area by
Hoyt Professional Cleaners, serving all the Tri-Cities. By Taco Lane, on the corner of Clearwater and Highway 395. By Haas Western Wear, 830 Columbia Center Boulevard for classic Western fashions. And for all the summer fun activities.
And now, to the shores of the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana, and Jim Hendrick.
Well, thank you very much, Hank, and hello, everybody. What started out to be a cloudy day with light periodic rain turned into a 91-degree sunny day, and then back to a threatening storm right now as we sit here on the banks of the Ohio River with the Coast Guard saying that perhaps 65-mile-an-hour winds will be coming up, and that has set us into a disarray. Don Poyer will be with me, as always. We'll be hearing from Lee Shaniff. We'll also be hearing from Dr. Richard Swanson on the condition of one driver by the name of Steve Reynolds. Steve Reynolds, of course, flipped over in the Cellular 1 has been taken to an Indianapolis hospital. His vital signs are stable, but we'll have to get an update on his condition. They were to be 3A, 3B, but they canceled that section in favor of going right to the final. But I don't know if it's how we're going to get that in with the way the weather conditions are. We'll be hearing from the drivers, the officials, keep you up to date on what's happened here. But first, let's take time out for this word. Heat 1A was taken by Jim Kropfeld in Miss Budweiser, average of 129.2. Steve Reynolds was second in the Cellular 1. Scott Pierce third in Mr. Pringles. Ron Snyder fourth in the whole set Miss Madison. The winner, Jim Kropfeld, was ready to go after a long delay, and he describes the action coming down to turn number 1.
Well, I just had to go out there and get with it. Steve got the inside on the backstretch warming up, and I pulled in lane 2, and we just came down. I nailed it as hard as I could, and Lauren was on the radio telling me that he was keeping up, leaving my lane in turn 1, which I did, and I held it as tight as I could with enough room for him, hoping that the rough water down there would slow him down, and I guess it did a little bit. I kind of stayed ahead for most of the race then.
Heat 1B was a wire-to-wire victory for Chip Hanauer. The Miller American average speed of 120.9 mile an hour. Even in winning, Chip does not feel his boat is in top competitive condition.
Well, we knew when we qualified yesterday that although it was a fast speed, that the boat was real erratic, and there was really no way we could do that speed in the race. But the change we know that needs to be done can't be done until we get the boat upside down, and we won't be able to do that until Monday and Tuesday for Detroit.
Second place to Jerry Hopp in the Thor U7. Third to Mitch Evans in Miss Pepsi, while Todd Yarling did not finish in the Risley video. Heat 2A was won by Miss Budweiser after a 2-lap duel with Ron Snyder and the whole set Miss Madison, who finished second. Mitch Evans finished third in Miss Pepsi, while Jerry Hopp took fourth in the Thor U7. Heat 2B was won by Steve Reynolds in the Cellular 1, an average of 121 mile an hour. Second went to Todd Yarling in the Risley Express. Third to Scott Pierce and Mr. Pringles, while Chip Hanauer lost the skid fin and did not finish when he had steering problems develop on lap number 2. Now we had a start of Heat 3A, and down out of corner number 2, and coming down the back chute and leading the way by 400 feet was the driver Steve Reynolds in Cellular 1, and halfway down that back chute, he all of a sudden started to fly the boat. End over end, but it landed right side up. Sponson was broken off. The tail was broken off. The canopy did remain intact. We have a latest update on the condition of Steve Reynolds from our APBA doctor, Dr. Swingson.
Steve was unconscious when we took him from the capsule. He remains unconscious. His vital signs were stable. It was obvious that he had a fractured left forearm, and he had a laceration of his leg. The rest of his injuries are not clear at the present time.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. But he was unconscious. I understand he's on the way by helicopter to Indianapolis.
We're taking him by Methodist Hospital helicopter to their trauma center.
And if we get any further word before we go off the air, but his vital signs are stable. The boat, of course, has been suffered a lot of damage. Lee Sheriff, our chief referee, with a lot of things going on during the day, will be stepping to our microphones in just a moment after this from your local sponsor. Taco. This is Jim Hendrick along with Don Poyer back here in the banks of the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana. Now stepping up forward is Lee Shaniff, our chief referee. And Lee, we had a 2-hour delay to start this event today because a Coast Guard Lieutenant J.G. wanted to have his boat in position to see the race, or am I wrong?
Jim, I think you're practically right. What happened was we had the Miller American break down, and while they were trying to tow him in, the tow rope broke, hit this big showboat or whatever it is that the Coast Guard's using. It went adrift downriver. He was a good half mile, maybe a half mile off course. He wouldn't let us run. He held us up 2 hours, and we didn't get on the water till 2 o'clock.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did that Coast Guard boat have any official function other than the Coast Guard in the way of safety to your drivers?
Absolutely none, Jim. The Coast Guard's connection with the races, as far as I know, is nothing but to protect the cruisers and so forth that come to watch the race, to keep them back off the race course. We have all our own safety, patrol, medical, as you know, Jim, fire, everything. In fact, it was shown here today. We had this accident, and they did an excellent job.
All right. More with Lee Shaniff and more from the Ohio River in Madison, Indiana, after this from your local sponsor. Indiana, the Ohio River, Jim Hendrick, Don Poyer, and with me, of course, is the chief referee, Lee Shaniff. Lee, now, I guess the latest word, it's official, it's coming down now, and you've been talking on your two-way radio while we're on that commercial break. I understand we have impending thunderstorms with winds up to 65 mile an hour, and I hear that you're not going to run a final heat.
Once again, Jim, the Coast Guard just informed me they're expecting winds up to 60 miles an hour, thunderstorms, the sky's getting black. they have canceled the race. We would have probably gone ahead and started it, and I would stop it if it actually started to rain or blow.
That means that 2-hour delay the Coast Guard gave us at the top of the day, she just out of our final heat.
That's right, Jim. Had we started at noon, we'd have been done a long time ago. But right now, our start would be in about a minute, and I would be running the start right now. It is black. It might get worse, but it only takes us 7-8 minutes to run a heat, Jim. We'd have had the final in, I bet, before it hit.
Okay, well, Lee, now we're going on to Detroit, which is your hometown. You've raced many times in the Gale 5 as a driver, the Gale 6, Gale 7, etc. I don't know. I've seen a lot of confusion in my time. But as I look, I think that the safety crews here today did a fine job when Steve Reynolds flipped over in the cellular.
Excellent job, Jim. They were there. We had watches on them. The way the accident happened, Budweiser was right in back of him, saw it happen, and so was U-22. The Miller had already broke down and gone off the course. I was watching the Miller. As I turned my head, I saw the cellular go over. I immediately got the red flags out, the red flares out, stopped the race, got on the radio, told all the patrol boats to head over there. Someone had a watch, and I think I heard someone say it was like 90 seconds by the time he flipped that the patrol boats were there, and within 2 minutes on top of them working.
Well, that means then that you're going to take the 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and the way they finished the points up to that point will describe and predict your winner.
Yes, we have a winner. The Budweiser is the winner. Ironically, Cellular is second. Ron Snyder and Miss Madison is third. Jerry Hopp and the Thor is fourth. And the Pringles is fifth. That's the order of finish, Jim.
Speaking of the winning driver, he's just walked up, and we'll be talking to him in just a moment after this. Time out for this word from your local sponsor. River, now that the high winds are expected, and we can see that there's a big rain coming down the valley now, and we're probably going to get wet. Let's call in the winning driver by way of points, this Budweiser driver, Jim Cropfield. And Jim, let me say before, congratulations. It is a tainted victory, you know, but you did one whale of a job when you saw that cellular go over in front of you. Tell me what you saw on the back chute of lap number 1 of Heat 3A.
Well, Steve and I came out of the turn. He was hit about 3 or 4 boat lengths on me. He out-accelerated me going up the back stretch, and we reached probably 165, 170 mile an hour, and he hit about 200 feet on me, and I saw the boat start to lift, and I hit the radio and told Lauren that Steve's going over, and by then he was up in the air, and as the boat reached its peak, it turned sideways and started to fall over in front of me, and I was afraid I was going to run right into the side of him when he came down, and I veered to the infield and kind of close between a couple of patrol boats and Steve, and made it through safely, though, but I was afraid that he landed upside down, and as I circled around, Lauren on the radio told me that it was right side up, and he saw the cockpit all intact, so I felt a little better there.
Okay, now, when it comes to that, you've been in the same position, only in testing before the start of the season, you ended upside down. That canopy, again, saved somebody.
It surely did. We can only thank, Bernie Little and Budweiser team for starting the enclosed cockpit back 3 years ago with the Griffin-powered Budweiser, and it developed along to where it became what it is today, and it really has saved our sport a lot.
Well, I'll tell you this, when you come right down to it, we've got the fellows from WRX making more noise on the network than I can shake a stick at. So, good, I don't care if it's raining, I got to stand out here, you guys can stand out here. All right, Jim Cropfield, you win 3 in a row. You're pretty leg up on the points race. What do you see for Detroit?
Well, it looks like the show is going to be off a little bit. Hopefully the Miller will be back together with their skid fit problems here that they've had, and have their engine and everything back up to their peak power, and hopefully we can go up there and break a few records and have a good time.
One final question before we let you go. The storm is coming in right now, and I can't even see the valley down there. We're really going to get wet. You're going to have to run for it. But let me ask you this, Jim Cropfield. That was very sudden. Did it give him any notice when it flipped over like that? And if not, what would cause that?
I'm not sure if it gave him any notice. I really couldn't see too much except the rooster tail, and just the edge of the boat is back of the sponson. But I think if you look across the river, there's a valley over there. That's about where Steve went over, and I think the air comes over that hill. It's blowing out of the south over that hill and right down into that valley, and it makes a little pressure pocket over there. I'm sure that wind must have caught him.
Well, let's go and wish you best of luck for the rest of the year.
Great, thank you.
All right. Jim Cropfield, the winning driver by way of points, as Lee Shana said, they have canceled the final, and it reverts back to the point system. We'll be talking to Commissioner Don Jones in just a moment after this from your local sponsor. It get worse, we're going to get wet, so we're going to fill all stations. Our canopy is going off the air right now. It's going to blow out of here I'll tell you right now, we're going to close this program off early, so stations, you can make up the spots later if you will. But let's get a final word from Don Jones. Don, I don't like the idea that we got delayed 2 hours for no reason at all, and we have to run into there.
Well, we've had a little bit of problem here all 3 days. They've used some experimental buoys that were not river-wise, ready to go. Upside down, light weights on the buoys. We've just had all sorts of difficulties. We tried everything we could to get the heat off, and I think the fans did get a good race for them. However, it looks like the odds were against us this weekend.
All right, so the final voter finished. Thank you. It's Miss Budweiser first, Cellular 1 second, Holstead, Miss Madison third, U7, Jerry Hopkins fourth place money, Miss Pepsi gets fifth. And that's the way it wraps up. The storm is coming in. We're not going to be able to talk to you. Our roof just blew off. Make up spots later. Till next week, on behalf of our entire crew from Detroit, Michigan, this is Jim Hendrick. So long.
Today's Budweiser Indiana Governor's Cup Regatta has been brought to you by Popeye's famous fried chicken. You're going to love that chicken from Popeye's. By Mercury Outboard. With Mercury, the race never stops. By the Colorado Bell Hotel and Casino in Laughlin, Nevada, a circus enterprise. By Budweiser. Beechwood Age for that clean, crisp taste. Hydrofan, this Bud's for you. And brought to you locally in your area by
Coit Professional Cleaners, serving all the Tri-Cities. By Taco Lane, on the corner of Clearwater and Highway 395. By Haas Western Wear, 830 Columbia Center Boulevard for classic Western fashions. And for all the summer fun activities, ride Ben Franklin Transit.
The Spirit of Detroit Regatta in Detroit, Michigan. This is Hank O'Neill, and this is the Unlimited Radio Network.
Hey, Mom. In Indianapolis, Reynolds was hurt when his hydroplane became airborne, overturned, and crashed upside down on the Ohio River during the Madison Regatta today. Hospital spokesman David Richards says Reynolds was unconscious when he was taken from the capsule of his wrecked boat and transported to a Madison hospital. He was then airlifted by helicopter to Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis. Richards says Reynolds was taken to the neurocritical unit. He has a diffused head injury. Dr. Richard Swanson of the Unlimited Racing Commission's medical staff says Reynolds was breathing and his vital signs were stable before he left Madison. He says Reynolds also had a broken arm. Jim Cropfeld in the Miss Budweiser, which won its 2 preliminary heats, has been declared the winner. Based on points, Reynolds finished second overall. Cropfeld says hydroplane accidents do not normally happen, but drivers always know it is a possibility. Running down baseball score.
Well, Unlimited Hydroplane driver Steve Reynolds of the Cellular 1 still in critical condition following the accident yesterday in Madison, Indiana. He was leading the Miss Budweiser in Heat 3A when he became airborne after a pocket of air sucked underneath the boat. Boat went over. Reynolds has yet to regain consciousness. Jim Cropfeld, who was following in second place and who's had the same thing happen to him earlier in this year, back in the spring, explains exactly what he saw.
Steve and I came out of the turn. He had about 3 or 4 boat lengths on me. He out-accelerated me going up the back stretch, and we reached probably 165, 170 mile an hour, and he hit about 200 feet on me, and I saw the boat start to lift, and I hit the radio and told Lauren that Steve's going over, and by then he was up in the air, and as the boat reached its peak, it turned sideways and started to fall over in front of me, and I was afraid I was going to run right into the side of him when he came down, and I veered to the infield and kind of close between a couple of patrol boats and Steve and made it through safely, though, but I was afraid that he landed upside down, and as I circled around, Lauren on the radio told me that he was right side up, and he saw the cockpit all intact, so I felt a little better there.
A similar accident, as mentioned, happened to Cropfeld earlier this year. Asked if that kind of accident gives any warning, he said,
"But I'm not sure if it gave him any notice. I really couldn't see too much except the rooster tail and just the edge of the boat as back of the sponson. But I think if you look across the river, there's a valley over there, and that's about where Steve went over. And I think that the air comes over that hill, it was blowing out of the south over that hill and right down into that valley, and it makes a little pressure pocket over there. I'm sure that wind must have caught him."
Cropfeld was declared the winner. The race final was canceled because of an impending storm. The next stop for the Unlimiteds is next week in Detroit on Sunday.
Well, Knuckleheads, once again, that's all the time we have for this week. Big thanks goes out to Laurie Marlow for digitalizing this race broadcast so I can have this saved and preserved, and not only saving it, but also sharing it with the podcast so I can share it with you. And hopefully you enjoyed listening to some of those old familiar voices from the past. Really miss a lot of those people that are no longer with us because they gave so much to the sport. And there just were some great personalities that are missed. So, Laurie, thank you again. And really appreciate your efforts to preserve the history of this sport. Now, we're starting it off big, 4th of July weekend over in Madison, Indiana, with the APBA Gold Cup. I really hope it goes so much better than the race did in 1887. Hopefully there's no wrecks, no injuries. It's a safe and fast and fun weekend. We're looking forward to seeing H1 and the Grand Prix Americas back on the water. It's going to be a great weekend. And hopefully, if you're not there, you're going to be able to watch it online, the streaming services on YouTube. But we'll be back next week with another great interview. And in the meantime, don't forget to check us out online. We're on Facebook, Instagram, our website, www.roostertailtalk.com. And like I said before, that's all I got for you this week. So until next time, I hope to see you at the races.